thank you. It's a very grueling process, and I know that a lot of questions were asked of the police department. And I watched you on TV testifying, and actually testifying about the MOU with the Police Officers Association, and I thought that you handled yourself very well. And I think that even though $4 million is a lot of money, out of a budget of $400 million, I think it's a pretty good result, and I think that the fact that you put in so much time is the reason for that. And just a quick question, we had a very major event, one of the most, one of the largest events in the year, Gay Pride, this past weekend, and I was wondering if you could just briefly report on how that went in terms of policing.
Certainly. The officers of the department once again stepped up, working together with the event organizers for all of the Pride events. And the events actually started on Friday night for the department in terms of the transgender march, and then in preparation for the closing down of Civic Center for the festival on Saturday. Those events went well. Saturday was the festival in Civic Center, and then in the evening in Dolores Park, there was a rally and then the Diamond March with all the motorcycles going up into the Castro, and then the Pink Saturday celebration in the Castro. That evening, we deployed many officers to the area, officers who were on duty as well as officers who were brought in on overtime, officers who had to have their days off canceled. And by and large, that event went well. I think that next year, having spoken with the captain, we will be working with the community to address the alcohol consumption. There was a lot of alcohol, and that led to some of the challenges that were out there. But again, the organizers stepped forward, and at midnight, as was scheduled, the event was concluded, and then DPW came in and started cleaning the streets. So without the help of the community, DPW, as well as the Department of Parking and Traffic personnel, it would have been much more difficult for the department. Then, just a few hours after that, was the parade on Sunday, and that parade was under the jurisdiction of the Southern Police Station, Captain O'Leary. And so while he had responsibilities for the parade, Dylan continued his responsibilities in the Civic Center area for the festival and the activities after the parade. And then that evening in the Castro, again, the Mission District officers were again tasked with ensuring that there was a safe environment. There were several broken windows that occurred as a result of the events. In both of those cases, officers were nearby and arrests were made, and that officers stood by while the proprietors came out to ensure that their property could be secured. So I think given the amount of people who came to San Francisco, who had a good celebration, the department under Pride and its leadership, we participated in the parade, and I think it was a great weekend for everybody with minimal difficult times in terms of crime problems.
I mean, the only thing I can say is kudos to you and to all the officers for your hard work. So thank you.
I have a question. I understand there was some trouble with juveniles, though, that juveniles came into the area, and there was emails that went out to tell them to come into the area, and that there was several arrested.
Last year, we had a situation that was similar, where there was a radio station encouraging young people to come to the area, and that's why, in order to try to prevent and be able to respond to that, we actually had increased the resources there in the Castro on Sunday evening. But beyond that, the night captain felt that we should have a few more officers, so he actually brought in resources from other stations and then held them over to make sure that there was a safe event. And there were arrests made, but by and large, it went well. But I think these are things that in planning every year, we know what the potentials are, and we know the need for personnel, and that's why we make sure that we bring enough resources to do what has to be done.
The only thing I'd like to say is I'd like, if you could pass on my congratulations to Captain Gober. I know Saturday night presented some challenges for him, since that group sometimes is reluctant to get permitted for whatever reason, who knows. but he always seems to rise to the occasion and does a very, very good job in the mission station. And I want you to pass my own personal thanks on to Captain Goldberg, because I think he's done a very, very good job with all that going on over the weekend, starting on Friday night. So
I certainly will. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, President Sparks. May I introduce the command staff before I sit down, please? Okay. Just so that everyone here in the community knows who sometimes when you write letters to or contact, I'd like to introduce the command staff members who are here. To the far right there, Deputy Chief Charles Cohane, who oversees our Administration Bureau. Deputy Chief Samuel Craig from the Airport Bureau. Commander Sylvia Harper from our Administration Bureau, also overseeing our recruitment and our training. Deputy Chief David Shin from Field Operations. Commander Steve Bikini from Field Operations. And Commander Jim Lynch from the Airport Bureau. And in the second row here, I'd like to acknowledge Director Charles Orts, who is our Director of Community Policing. Thank you.
Sergeant Riley. Is there any public comment about the Chief's report? Well, seeing none, why don't we go to number 2, please?
Item 2, Madam President, is the OCC Director's report.
How we come here from the community. But briefly, the Office of Citizen Complaints is a city agency that reports to the Police Commission. We take complaints to office. You can be a witness. You can put that in, you can put a complaint in on behalf of a friend, a relative, someone that you've met, and we will take the necessary steps to investigate that complaint. We are able to access all the information that we need from the police department, what they have, but we also rely on members of the community to bring those complaints to us and also bring us the information that we need to cooperate. We're very different from criminal agencies or from a civil claim. The result of our investigation, should we find misconduct, should we find that an officer did not follow the rules and procedures of the police department, is that we would forward that complaint either to the Chief of Police or to the Police Commission so that the officer could receive appropriate discipline for disobeying the rules of his or her department. And so I think that's a very important distinction, because this is the only way that that message can get through to the department. This is the only way that an officer can be disciplined for their misconduct or for something that they did. Occasionally, we also take complaints in which we find that the officer didn't violate the rules and procedures of the police department, but that the rules and procedures of the police department aren't sufficient to protect the community from certain kinds of conduct, or they're not sufficient to give the community the kinds of police service that they deserve. And in that case, we would make a policy recommendation to this police commission, study the issue, see how we can put together better training, better procedures, and better policies so that this police department can be the best that it can be and deliver the service that I know the community wants and deserves. So again, I have brochures, and you can always contact me. I have cards as well. Thank you.
We submitted a budget which included the recommendations made in the Controller's report for the OCC, and the Mayor's office basically gutted it and removed pretty much everything that we added to the budget. Ms. Field's been working with the Board of Supervisors. I had a couple of conversations with, or contact with a couple of board members today, and hopefully the board will be adding back about 50% of the money that the mayor cut out. So hopefully we'll get some of the modifications as recommended by the Controller's report into this new year.
And we hope that this will happen in this budget cycle. If not, we have assurances from the Board of Supervisors that they would be open to a supplemental budget request as soon as there's a new director. So one way or the other, get those resources.
Thank you.
Madam President, if I can ask a question about that, is there anything that we as a commission should do in terms of that?
I would say my only suggestion would be is if you could contact Supervisors Amiano and or Dufty, or both, and Peskin, and just ask them for that consideration, because they're considering it now in the next day or two. And we've asked them to add back about $350,000 back in,
Correct.
which isn't a large amount of money. Originally, we asked for 10 new positions pursuant to the Controller's report. The mayor cut it down to 1 new position. And we've added back enough money to fully fund 5 new positions, so halfway. And so that would be my one thing that you might be able to do.
Is there a hearing, Madam President, that's scheduled?
Not at this point.
Okay. I mean, the one point that I would say is, you know, we have consistently said, and I think the voters in San Francisco understand, that you cannot have the kind of civilian oversight that we all envision without having an OCC that's properly, adequately funded. I think the fact that the mayor's office has done this, I think, is a clear indication of, you know, where they are in terms of the need to have as much oversight as possible, and I think that's unfortunate.
Well, Commissioner Marshall and I was going to mention this later, but Commissioner Marshall and I met with the OCC, with the mayor's director of policy, deputy chief of staff of policy, and the mayor's budget person who oversees the department in the OCC. And their explanation was about, number one, is that they believe that it would be better used after the new OCC director was hired, to which we refuted that, and also that, you know, it's a big city and they've got a lot of priorities. And so obviously this wasn't in the top 10, but hopefully the supervisors will be able to add some money back so that we can at least get started prior to the time the new OCC director is hired.
Well, it's clear that having adequate civilian oversight is not a priority.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments for Ms. Fields? Thank you. Is there any public comment about Ms. Fields' presentation?
You know, we have lost a lot of faith and trust in the way business is done in the city, with the city family, and that trickles down sometimes to OCC and other departments, that the people feel that things is happening too slow. Like you just said, Mr. Campbell, said about the budget and money, priority, it seems like it's never there when it comes to solving all these cases that takes years and years. I just want to say real briefly that we need a satellite office at OCC in the Western District, as well as Baby Montreal, where people can feel, if I do file this complaint, maybe I can speak to someone that's nearby and closely that I can see, and I can actually have this dialogue with them or conversation with them on a day-to-day basis, versus going all the way down to 2nd Street, which most people is intimidated for some reason they don't ever get down there. Now, I went to Northern Station personally request for OCC complaint form and been told by the desk officer that they're not here. And I know they're there. I know all the departments stations must have OCC forms. So you can be discouraged, and when something happens where there's a misunderstanding with an officer, you might even be turned off if you go into a station and someone is at the desk and they're not familiar with their own policy. But just by, I think that would help. I think that would really help the process, and it will build confidence in the people, because people have lost a lot of confidence in OCC, in particular with all the murders that have taken place over the years. So thank you.
And I actually talked about the violent crime chief and I met this a week and a half ago on Friday and talked about violent crime. I'm sorry I missed your presentation last week, Chief, although I did get an opportunity to watch the tape of it, and I appreciate everything outlined that you're doing. But I expressed a comment to you a couple of weeks ago, and I'll express it again here, is that I actually believe we need to raise this to a higher level of visibility within the department. And as a policy measure within the San Francisco Police Department, and make sure people understand in the city that we are prioritizing this, and this is a very large focus of the department. And to that end, I suggested to you at that time that we possibly look at reorganizing under the Investigations Bureau and maybe adding a commander or a violent crime unit as opposed to a captain. And I would also reiterate that. Hopefully you and I can discuss that again on Friday. But it seems to me, and the present company accepted, not that recruiting is not an important factor, but it seems to me if we have a commander over recruiting, that at the least we should have a commander over issues as important as violent crime in the city. And And so I would like to further discuss that with you and also the commissioners possibly discuss that at some point to look at. Hopefully we can talk about that this Friday. Also, I've asked Commissioner Veronese to work with you, Chief, and also with Chief Cohane on 8.01. Critical incident general order to look at adding homicides to 8.01 and what that would take, and then possibly adding another general order pursuant to the way it's structured now within the 800-page series, addressing homicides and how they're pursued and addressed within the San Francisco Police Department. Neither one of those, I believe, would be, and I was the city attorney here, so I'm sure I'll be corrected next week, but neither one, I believe, would be necessary we can confer issue. So it should be something we could expedite and move forward very quickly. Commissioner Veronese has agreed to that. And then the third thing is I talked to Commissioner Marshall the last couple of days, and we're going to, I've asked him if he would be willing to chair a standing committee of this commission, basically a standing committee as a violent crime oversight committee, which would be periodically, would be noticed meetings, possibly members of the public would be invited to participate in that meeting, and that would allow the commission to have periodic updates on a more regular basis from the department on what's going on relative to violent crime. This would be a notice, as I said, a notice committee. Commissioner Veronese has agreed to be on it, and we can have, I think, 3 commissioners on it, so if another commissioner would like to be on it, I would certainly welcome that. And so that would be the third item that hopefully we'll move forward on, and Commissioner Marshall is, I think, enthusiastic about the idea, and we'll be talking about how that's going to be organized and how that will go forward in the next few days. So those are the 3 things, Chief, I believe this commission and individual commissioners have talked about and would like to pursue to raise the level of dialogue, to raise the discourse about violent crime within San Francisco. So I would certainly welcome your conversation, your comments about those 2 things. Commissioners, any other reports or comments you'd like to make? Mr. Campbell.
Thank you again, Madam President. If I can simply just underscore a couple of issues that I'd like to make sure that we, as a commission, put on the agenda as quickly as possible. And one of them we had talked about repeatedly, and that's the language access, DGO, and my understanding is that that's coming before the commission pretty soon, sometime in July. I'm not sure of when exactly. But it's important that we have about a third of the population in San Francisco is non-English speaking, and there aren't uniform protocols for how the San Francisco Police Department interacts with non-English speakers. It's important for us to make sure that we have uniformity in how we deal with those citizens as a department. The other issue, which is an issue that came up, Chief, at the last meeting, is the issue of the security cameras and just analyzing the data to make sure that, in fact, they are working and they're having the intended effect. There are many of us who have questions about the cameras because of the privacy issues involved. And so if it is the case that they are not working, then I think that we need to know that so that we can take the necessary steps to address that. But I think it's important for us that irrespective of what's required under the legislation that we have an ongoing process for assessing, analyzing the data to see what impact, if any, they're having. I think that another issue that I hope that we get a chance to talk about soon is the issue of the OCC and its outreach efforts. For those of you who may not be aware, the interim director has been in his position for a very short period of time because the previous director, the permanent director, left. And in a very short period of time, I think that the interim director has taken some very appropriate department. And I know that one of the things that they have been working on is to do better outreach to the community. And I do hope that at some point in the near future that we have a conversation about those efforts. The gentleman spoke about that we perhaps have a satellite office. I don't know what the resources allow, but I think that efforts along the lines described, where you go to the community and really reach out to the community and do it in a way that is not threatening, in a way that is welcoming of the community are the kinds of things that we want to see. So if we can at some point do that, I think that would be very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Campos. Questions? We can actually comment both times if you want.
I'll let Mike say that.
Thank you. Any public comment about the Commissioner's report? Seeing none, Sergeant Riley, calling the floor, please.
Item 4, Madam President, is to introduce Captain Kevin Dillon, who is the commanding officer of the organization.
Be here. First off, Commissioners, I want to assure you that in keeping with the Mayor's directive, his executive order regarding bottled water, that water was not paid for with city funds. That was paid for by the Floral Fund at Northern Station. So feel free to drink as you wish. Does everyone have a copy of the packet? If you don't, just raise your hand and a member of my staff will bring you a copy so you can follow along. Don't all jump up at once. Thank you. Since my last address, which was February of 2006. Just want to wait until So your first slide gives you the map of the Northern District with some of the demographics. That information as far as the population comes from the census in 2000. We don't have any further updated information. The text on the Northern Police District is what is on the department's website. There's one for each district station that just gives a person an idea of what goes on in that particular police district. This is a very large neighborhood from Market Street out to the water, the marina. Larkin Street on our east boundary, Steiner on our west boundary to Broadway, and it cuts over to the Presidio. Next is the organizational chart for Northern Station. I'd like to introduce one of the 4 lieutenants, which is here tonight, Lieutenant Con Johnson. Just left a meeting that the mayor held on Polk Street. He did a walk on Polk Street, so I'm happy he was able to make it here to the meeting along with several members of the community that were there. I'd call your attention down to the bottom boxes on the officers. In the last few years, we have added 14 beat officers in the Western Addition that were not there before. 10 of those officers walk the day watch and swing watch, and then an additional 4 hours officers that work from 11 in the morning till 9 at night, patrol exclusively in the housing authority properties to try to offset the cutbacks that we've seen on the federal level for security in the housing authority, to bring some more peace to those areas in the district. We have 20 beat officers in the Northern District, which I believe is more than any of the other 10 districts. In addition to the Western Addition, we have beat officers at City Hall, on Polk Street, Japantown, and the Chestnut Union Street area. The demographics of the station, just a breakdown of males and females, and by race also. Bilingual officers. And then again, the census data from 2000, which I keep pulling out each year, and it becomes more and more out of date. Here in a couple of years, obviously, we're going to get updated, but the different groups are broken down in order of size for the Northern District. I'll give you an idea of the population here, and then, of course, the pie diagram, and then to our crime statistics. Of most importance here in the district, of course, is our homicides, and we have seen an increase in the last few years. Of the 8 homicides that we had so far this year in 2007, 5 of these homicides have occurred below Geary Street, Western Addition, and Hayes Valley. 3 others occurred above Geary Street. Actually both were domestic violence related. Obviously a big concern in the district, in addition to the extra beat officers that we have, The department also has given us extra resources as far as our tactical units, our specialist units, and of course the gang task force, which was already mentioned, to give us a higher visibility in the Western Addition area and to help suppress some of this criminal activity. So at times that's been very effective, but unfortunately sometimes hot spots appear in other parts of the city and some of those resources have to be moved. And that's kind of the key to our reaction, I think, to violent crime in the city, is to be flexible and be able to move our resources around. So we see sexual assault seem to be down, but I think that's too early. The year-to-dates are for the first 5 months of 2007. That's when we were able to get our data from. So we weren't able to get obviously anything from June. So just to give you an idea of what's been going on this year, since we're meeting halfway through the year. Next we go down to assault and robberies. Assaults have been pretty consistent the last 3 years, and then we see, if anything, we're a little bit behind the curve for the first half of 2007. Hopefully it stays that way. And then robberies, we see what appears to be a significant drop in robberies here in the district. But otherwise they are were consistent the last 3 years. The thefts and burglaries on page 11. From the thefts, auto break-ins have been removed from those numbers. We'll get to those in a minute. These are just the other grand thefts and petty thefts that occur throughout the district. And then burglaries, again, fairly consistent the last 3 years. There appears to be a substantial reduction in burglaries also for the first half of 2007. And hopefully we'll be able to maintain that through the summer and the rest of the year. And then we get to our auto thefts and auto break-ins. Again, a drop in the auto thefts. People always ask, why do we keep seeing these drops in the auto theft? And I can only think it's just we're getting more and more modern vehicles that are more and more difficult to steal. The older cars that you just needed a screwdriver or a couple of wires to jump, that doesn't. We see less and less of those cars on the road. They're hitting the junkyards, and we're seeing more modern cars with computer chips and keys. They're much more difficult to steal. So I think that's a big part of our drop in auto thefts. Car break-ins continue to be a very serious problem, as you can see in 2006. Something that we're constantly providing education on, and I think we fairly well educated the residents of San Francisco. One of the issues is the visitors to San Francisco, and we're trying to help enlist our citizens so that when they have visitors to San Francisco, that they come from areas where they don't have to be so concerned about locking their cars or being worried what's in it, that they take the time to mention it to them before they arrive so that they don't become victims. Just too many people leaving laptops and purses sitting on their front seat. And then we have some statistics here on the arrests for specifically the auto thefts and the auto break-ins. We don't have anything for 2007, but these just give the statistics for the last 3 years, both crimes. I point out the car break-ins consistently. When we make arrests for car break-ins, even though we have units that go out and follow individuals who are involved in this activity, and sometimes it's hours and hours and hours waiting for them to break into a car. The most successful aid that we have in fighting auto break-ins is citizens who are alert, who, when they see something suspicious, when they hear a noise during the middle of the night, instead of rolling over and going back to bed, they call the police respond, and they're able to identify the perpetrator and make an arrest. So consistent with the police reports, that is one of our biggest allies in making those arrests. Getting to traffic collisions, fatalities. Almost 2 years now without a pedestrian fatality after 4 in 2005. The 2 that we've had have involved accidents between 2 vehicles, not involving pedestrians. 2 of the police districts, Ingleside and Park, have started doing decoy operations, which many of you may have heard about, where they put an officer out in plain clothes to cross the street, and then have motorcycle officers to sight the vehicles that don't heed the right-of-way to the pedestrians. And we've also started doing that here in the Northern District. It's been very successful in the other 2 districts. So we'll hopefully continue to do that. I think it's very effective in terms of education to the public. And obviously we'll talk about that in our newsletters in the future. Firearms are obviously a big part of the violence in San Francisco and here in our district. We have 53 year-to-date that we've recovered in the northern. The number I have is 454 for the entire city of firearms that have been recovered. So that is certainly a priority to recover firearms whenever we can. And they are a big part of this violence that we see. A little bit about the calls for service, the A and B and C priorities. We talk about complaints, looking at trends in complaints. We see a drop in 2006, not only in complaints, but also in allegations. For an incident, an individual would make one complaint, but there may be many allegations, different things that they were unhappy with that the police officers did. So the number of allegations is going to be larger than the number of complaints. And again, so obviously pleasing to myself and my lieutenants and sergeants to see the number of complaints and allegations decreasing for last year. Page 18, quite a bit of information on that one, but what we try to do there is compare complaints to calls for service and how many complaints the officers receive based on the number of calls. So we went from 2,600 to 2,697, now we're up to 2,786. So for every 27, almost 2,800 calls for service, one complaint is received. And the trend seems to be moving in the right direction. So again, good statistic as far as I'm concerned. And then we look at the use of force allegations within those complaints, and we compare those to the number of arrests that we made. And we see in 2004, 1 for every 111, increasing to one for every 144, and now 1 for every 202 arrests. So again, a trend going in the right direction. Documented use of force at the station. Anytime an officer uses force, that information is logged at the station. They have forms that are filled out by supervisors. The officer goes and discusses their use of force with the sergeant, and then that information is entered. So we see an increase in the total number of uses of force, but then we see a decrease in 2007, at least so far for the year. 38 is certainly under the number for last year. I don't have the use of force allegations for 2007, but just the total number of uses of force. Code enforcement is a big part of what we do at all the district stations. Each station has a code enforcement officer. Jeff Sung is here tonight. He's our code enforcement officer. He works very closely with the city attorney on specific problems on Haight Street and a variety of other places. We've listed our 2007 efforts that have been made, and then also behind that you'll see all the cases that were worked on in 2006. Our city attorney, Catherine Houston, is about to take a leave of absence for a few months, so she's been a big asset to the Northern District this last year and a half. And we'll be getting a different city attorney assigned to us. Again, I include a list of the consulates. Chinese consulate obviously takes the largest part of our efforts, but the other consulates do periodically require assistance for a variety of reasons, usually small-scale demonstrations or events that they have with the consulate. We're a district that's very busy with events. You mentioned the Gay Pride this weekend. We're very busy with those two. The weekend before was Festa Filipina and also the Juneteenth events on Fillmore Street. And then the weekend before that was the Union Street Fair. This coming weekend we will have the Fillmore Street Fair both Saturday and Sunday. So the fair season for us as it is for other districts. And just a big part of what we do along with the demonstrations. A lot of the major demonstrations either come to the Civic Center or start at the Civic Center. So we do catch quite a few of those there. And then just a summary of some of the events, the types of special events that we have here in the district. For 2007, 2006, some are events that we have every year, and some are just specific one-time events. And lastly, my resource sheet, which lists my email and phone number. So looking around the room, I think pretty much everybody here is on our email list to get our newsletter on a weekly basis, but obviously for anybody that isn't, that's certainly available. So with that, I will conclude and await your questions after public comment.
Thank you, Captain Dillon. Commissioners, would you like to ask questions now or public comment first?
I'd actually like to ask a couple of questions now because I want the public to be able to reflect on my questions when they comment. Captain, what kind of outreach was done for this meeting?
I'm sorry, outreach commissioner for what?
For this meeting?
Besides the newsletter, and then the beat officers that are assigned to the beats in the Western Edition were all given flyers to pass out in the community.
And they did that?
They did.
why, in your own opinion, why is it that we have, and a recent count was about 11 people in this room that aren't paid for by this department to be in this room? I mean, why are there that few people here, in your opinion?
I don't know if it's the change of time, and as we said, maybe we'll see some people coming in later on. I don't know.
And you would think that with a community that is having problems, that is having gunshots and the recent issues just in the past couple of weeks, that this would impact people. Just maybe we just didn't do enough outreach, or maybe there's an underlying reason that you know about.
It's also a community that has a lot of meetings, and not to say that they're meeting out, but there are a lot of venues for them to meet and discuss a lot of these issues, the violent crime and other issues down in the center of the district.
When those meetings come up, I'd like to hear about it, because certainly the police commission is a commission that should be invited to those types of meetings or crime. I try to put myself in a position as I'm listening to you, and I've been to many of these community meetings, as you know, and the chief, the command staff knows. And these meetings typically tend to be the same, and I don't want to get numb to them. But at the same time, what I try to do is put myself in the seat of the audience and try and determine what the audience really wants to hear based on what's happening in this particular neighborhood. So my comment to the audience is that as you come up and you have your comments to this commission, to the department generally, is that you voice questions that you would like the captain to answer, whether it's what is this department doing, are we doing enough? I have a lot of questions, frankly. When I look at